Right, sorry about that. I have no idea why the audio was so bad. I sounded like a chipmunk myself, so I'm in no position to do a live at the moment. Things are a little tricky to say the least, but they're getting sorted out. Um, so let's jump in this. Well, I hope they are anyway. Should be back on a decent internet tomorrow. Well, uh, yeah, tomorrow at some stage. Probably very late at night. But right, anyway, let's jump in. This is our introduction to Jon Wedger, courtesy of Brian. Where the hell did you come from, Gerrish? Um, Trying to dig into his background, you really can't find anything out. He tells us he's ex-Royal Navy. Then he says he was at the head of Chambers of Commerce or something, and a businessman. Um, I don't really know. He's very shady. Can't find much about him. Slippery little beggar. What we do know is that like everything bad has kind of sort of come from him. Well, not everything. I mean, obviously, there's loads of bad things in the world, but in this little bubble of grifters, liars, and I don't know, uh, fanatic people. Um, I actually don't know if he's got political aspirations. Really don't know. Uh, from his chat on the street and his David Icke moment, being told that he has to do God's work, he kept it very, very quiet, and he continues to keep that very, very quiet. But he gave the whole thing away, didn't he? Everything was down to Satniks. But he's just kept that quiet, and everybody that he's sort of that's managed to get boosted into a platform has been a victim of elites or Satanists, or how did he meet Wilfred Wong, the government lobbyist, the Christian government lobbyist for the Jubilee campaign? Like, I don't know. It's shady, shady. But here's well, here's Johnny. Right, listen to how he introduces him as working still, and he confirms this at the end. Because it's John, he's toned it right down here. The story is completely transformed, obviously, since I think this was recorded back in 2015 or somewhere around there. Um, might have even been a bit earlier than that. I can't find this video again to actually find out. So many videos have just vanished, absolutely vanished from the UK column, like about the UK column. I don't know whether it's it's my YouTube or my DuckDuckGo or whatever, and somebody else can find different results than me. But I'm trying to find like the Lou Collins radio show that used to be all over YouTube. Now there's barely anything there. I think there's Liberty something where she's got a video of her with David Icke. But as far as Lou Collins goes, she's vanished. I don't know. It's just really strange. I'm not enjoying my emails at the moment. They're about as terrible as they've ever been. Jeez. Anyway, let's jump in.
On the front, my guest today is Detective Constable Jon Wedger of the Metropolitan Police.
Right, absolutely is still working. Right, it's the same old bleh bleh. I'm going to take it to about 8 minutes because it's long. Hang on, a bit more. Oh, that'll do about 8
like
minutes.
the club in Central, for Europe. So I went on to this job, and I was.
He actually says then that London was the clubbing central for Europe. Don't know what clubbing he was doing, but I would have thought Ibiza and the Canaries, but anyway.
I got a job with what they call the Street Offences Unit, and street offences relates to the old Street Offences Act of the last century, which refers to prostitution, street prostitution. And our job was to go and sort of arrest street prostitutes, really, but also we had governance for juveniles. So if a juvenile was found on the street in a red light area late at night, believed involved in it, they were to be sort of brought in, taken into protective custody. And every now and then a child would be found, usually a girl, and our job was to then bring her in, inform social services. The kid would then be placed into protective police custody while social services work out emergency protection orders, EPOs.
What sort of age for the girls then?
At 14, it tended to be under 17. The law was a bit, the law prior to the implementation of the amended sex offender, I forget what it's called now, not sex offenders, it's to do with...
He's forgot what it's called. He's still working policeman. Okay.
Child sexual offences, but it'll come
Isn't it exploitation? I mean, I don't know.
to me. The Sexual Offences Act, I think, it got amended 2003, was quite complicated, and it was going back to, it was gender specific as well. So offences against boys were different against offences against girls, and anyway, so we would find these kids and take them into custody and everything else. But the problem then was that it was a competitive environment. So it was number crunching. So you were given a target of each car that was put out, 3 cars were put out per night, and you would have a competition who could arrest as many prostitutes as you can. And 10 would be a good...
So is this where Nikki Cooper got all her convictions? She would just like help boost the numbers by just standing in a specific place. Jon Wedger's good old mate Nikki Cooper. So is that where she racked up her 400 and however many convictions, or convictions, not arrests? Is that what she was just like, yeah, I'll help you with your quota, I'm going to be standing here, come arrest me? He's good old mate Nikki.
Figure, and if you did that every day of the week, you was a top team. So there was competitions, and you could process a prostitute very quickly via the custody, and it was pointless because all of them were drug addicts, all of them had come from the care system.
Yep.
And
excuse me, all of them? Every single prostitute had come from the care system? I don't think so. I know the figures are terrible with regards to crime and imprisonment and things like that. It's disproportionate. Every single prostitute? Don't think so, sir. Don't think so.
if you brought a kid in, that was your night finished. The car was taken off the road, and that was it, so that you wouldn't get the figures. So you was encouraged not to deal with them.
Right, that is a very interesting comment.
Can they just call Nikki up and get to actually like solicit outside the nick? So like they didn't need a car?
Isn't it, for people who look to the police to be protecting the weak and vulnerable in society, and you're saying that the regime to get the targets with the prostitutes means that vulnerable children we don't want to take them.
Well, it is.
I see this differently now than I used to when I used to watch UK Column, because I used to watch it before I went overseas. So if this was 2015, I wasn't even in the country. I was watching it before then. But knowing what I know now, Brian Gerrish pretty much cleans up the narrative through this. So yeah, it's weird.
I mean, it's shocking because if you think about it, if a man
It is
has
shocking.
sex with a prostitute, it's the woman who commits the offence, right? But that's a woman of consenting age. Someone has sex with a child, that's rape, and you're talking a major crime offence. You're talking an offence that carries a life tariff. Yet they're committing major crime, and you're sort of dissuaded from dealing with it. And I remember bringing one little girl in. She was 14, around about 14, and a lot.
Right, okay. I'm going to put a link up to this big lie that goes all the way through this recording, and I'm going to skip it because it's impossible to pinpoint it down. What I'll do is I'll can I put... Yeah, I'm just wondering if I can actually put this whole thing... Actually, I can re-upload it another time. This whole thing... Nah, come on, get my channel taken down. You have to do it with commentary, but I can't stomach all of this. And it's just such a big lie. He's bringing his sort of story in here. And I'm going to put a link in the description box as to why it's a massive lie. And it's a massive lie And as time goes along, it's going to become apparent why it's a massive lie.
These kids were undernourished and they were heavily infected with diseases like hepatitis C, some with HIV and things like that, and so they look younger than their age. And one young girl brought in, she had scabies due to her lifestyle, and the moaning that they gave me for bringing the girl in, because they said the car will now need to be cleaned, the room that you take them to will now need to be fumigated. The girl's a pain in the arse because she's always shouting and screaming, and and it's pointless anyway because she'll be back out tomorrow. So it was appalling, really. There was, and what they said, if you see her again, just tell her to do one to get out of here.
Right, and this was being told to all the police.
Here we go.
It wasn't just yourself.
Right, this is Brian now trying to get his. Come on, Jon, you're not doing a good enough job here. I'm going to have to be more articulate because this is actually my agenda that I'm bringing to the table here.
Anybody who was involved in this type of work was told this.
That was told. Yeah, that was the rule, the unwritten rule.
Right.
And so they never dealt with it. But what happened was there was information from the moment I came in regarding one particular woman, and her name was Foxy. Her street name was Foxy, and she was a large.
Right, it's very strange that he doesn't give her a real name. Her name is Fiona Walsh. Welsh? One or the other. Got the link, read it again. I'm just going back in the old archives of my brain here. He can name this person, but he can't name this person because if he names this person, it's a 10-second search and you'll find out that Roxy actually was arrested in 2006 and was put in prison in 2007. Now, when she was put in prison for a long time, 10 years. Now, if that comes out in this interview, then he can't be used. He can't be used. Jon Wedger is useless. So we've got to keep her as an unnamed Foxy person. But unfortunately, people on the internet that sniff rats, they find these things out.
Larger-than-life character, and she was a street prostitute, but she was rumoured to be pimping out young girls. And I'd heard the rumours from the moment I walked in the office, but nothing was ever done about this woman.
Not true.
Anyway, I sort of got moved on merit. I did very well on the street.
Oh my God.
And
Jon patting himself on the back there. I done very well.
What was your rank then?
Detective,
Right.
And I was chosen to go onto quite an elite little unit, not dealing with vice. It was dealing with other stuff, more organised crime. And I went on to that, and I did incredibly well. But then I was asked to come back to vice.
Okay. He done incredibly well. He done really well. Don't forget to put that in there, Jon. You are great.
And to be the senior investigating officer in an allegation of child prostitution. So, but by that time, I think what we need to establish.
I wish he'd stop saying that. How many people have pulled him up on that? Child exploitation. No such thing as what he's just said.
As well is that from 2000, I had been a lone parent of 4 children. I've been left to bring up 4 children, and the relevance will become apparent, shortly. So, not only was I then asked to work again back with the children, I was now looking after children of my own, and they were all at that time under 10, and one was an infant. So it was a bit hard going for me, and the hours were irregular, and childcare was a bit of a nightmare, especially if you're dealing with kids, being taken in care orders. Your day could be a long one. But I was sort of
the tiniest violin is playing.
I told, look, we'd like you to go on it, so I did it, and it was a young girl called Zoe, and Zoe had she was I think about 14 or something like that. Again, very young looking for her age. So Zoe looked about 12.
See, now this is the integral part of his case. He doesn't actually know how old this girl is. He thinks it, he thinks it around that age, give or take. Meh, whatever. I would think it's pretty important. You would know this inside out. You would have documentation here. I mean, that's one thing that Brian doesn't ask him at all that he could pop this up on the UK column. Oh, and here is Jon being persecuted here. Here is this piece of evidence, that piece of evidence. I mean, he must have paperwork. He's been through the tribunal. He's got paperwork. Doesn't show anyone.
And she'd made an allegation that this woman Foxy had been pimping her out. And she'd made a couple of allegations and they hadn't gone anywhere. So what was told was, look, can you look into it? She's made allegations before. She's a bit of a nightmare. She might be lying. She might not, but she's a bit persistent. See what you can do. So I went, okay. So I went to see the girl, made an appointment, and was told she's very anti-police, you know, and she is a bit of a handful. So I went with a colleague. They made the introduction.
To where?
Introduced me to this girl, and you know, and what I used to.
So he made an appointment with an exploited child. How did he make the appointment? Who went with him and where? Where did he go to make this appointment with this very difficult police-hating child?
Do was I was good with the kids, so we'd sit down and I'd just start doodling or drawing or something like that, engaging them, and then
with a
ice-breaking stuff, and then the conversation, the narrative begins. Anyway, we started chatting and everything else, and she turned around to me. She said, "You know, you're."
Can you imagine? She's street smart. She's hardened by life because she's been exploited, and he gets what, a colouring book out? I mean, 14-year-olds anyway, at that age, you get a book out and start doodling. They'd be like, you all right, mate? Shut up.
Different to all the others. I went, well, that's all right. You know, I don't mean to, you know, and I wouldn't even dress like the other coppers. I was always scruff bag, really. You know, I hated wearing a suit.
There's been consistency then.
You know, and I liked the street. I was good on the street, you know. And
of course he was good.
And she said, you know, I like you. I'm happy to talk to you. I said, okay. Well, let's do it properly then. She said, yeah, all right. So we had an agreement. We shook hands. We made an appointment to do a proper, what they call an ABE interview, which is like a video recorded interview. And we sat down.
So the responsible adult that was with her, who was that then? Who was that? Because she was underage. She would have had a responsible adult with her. She was being interviewed.
And we had a chat. We interviewed her, and she told me the story start to finish. And she's the product of broken family. The mother was a drug addict. The father was absent, and the mother was buying drugs off this girl Foxy, and Foxy then started to groom her because the mother was unable to look after her. She then ended up living with the grandparents, but the grandparents lived in a red light area, and so Foxy would go and pick this young girl up and a basic grooming, look after her, show her some attention, a bit of love, do her hair for her, give her makeup, but then introduce her to cannabis, got her smoking cannabis, and then would then take her to hotels. These were bottom end hotels. These were the sort of places where a lot of the builders would go to, you know. So there'll be like converted Victorian houses or whatever. In one area of London, there's a big row of them, and a lot of them were maintenance and building works from the north would come down and stay in these hotels. So Foxy had an agreement with the night porters, and the night porters would make a room available for her, so she would take her clients in there. So
what does Jon do? Doesn't he look after a building in London? Sorry, this is not funny. This is not funny, but isn't he kind of like the night porter, the maintenance man, in that building where he's in either on the roof or he's in the cupboard? Isn't that what he does when he's not doing out of the blue groundworks and tree surgery? Like, all right, Jon.
she'd go in there with her client, start having sex and have this young girl there watching, and then encourage the young girl to get involved. And then from there, she would then start giving the young girl the bigger drugs. So the Class A drugs is what they want the kids on.
Okay, so, but it worked when you went to see her and you started doodling on a piece of paper. So this is a really hard teenager. Got more life experience than most of us do. I mean, it's all a big lie. I mean, it's all a big lie. I'm not saying that situations like this don't happen. We know that they do. But Jon had nothing to do with this. Nothing to do with this.
Got them on the Class A drugs, especially the crack cocaine. It's got a real grip on them, you know. And this girl had no way of getting these drugs, so she relied on Foxy as her medicine lady, you know. So she got her on crack cocaine, and then she started then pimping the young girl out, getting the young
As her medicine lady. Don't you mean drug dealer?
girl involved. And then she would then get the girl to introduce her friends to it. So she was then introducing her friends. Also come from families that parents were drug addicts or absent or whatever. And so, or in the care system. In fact, all the kids we dealt with were subject to care orders, whether they were residential care orders or just normal care orders, But they're all known to social services and from at-risk backgrounds. And so she gave me the name of another kid. So I went to see that girl. The story was identical. And the other thing was, I said, well, what about the police? Did the police ever get involved? And both girls said, well, we would get hidden in a bush. If we was put on the street, if the police came, Foxy would hide us in a bush. But she knew the coppers anyway. She'd just flirt with them and they would just let her go. And she said, but also there's a judge. There's a judge involved. I said, what do you mean? She went,
Okay, yeah, what do you mean, John? There's a judge involved. She's told you everything. What's the name of this judge? What judge? Name him. Name him. This guy's a criminal. We need to know about it. Come on, you're the whistleblower. Give us the names. Name him. Or are you waiting for him to die so you can name him and then slander him after his death?
no, judge at the magistrate's court. So when Foxy's charged and goes for the judge is our client anyway. So the judge.
That's not true, is it? Because Foxy, well, she got convicted. She'll be out by now. But in 2007, she got 10 years. So clearly, was that judge have the day off? Shut up, liar.
Lets her off. So I checked this out. I went through the disposal history, the criminal history of this girl, and found she keeps getting bindovers, this Foxy. So I thought, right, well, there's
Fiona.
something in this. So all of a sudden, these girls then introduced me to other girls, who introduced me to other girls, and these ages went down to 9 years old.
Right.
And, some came from traveller sites, some actually came from the residential care homes, and there was no one looking out for them, and these kids were known to the
I doubt that very much, that 9, 10, 11-year-olds came from traveller sites. Gosh, do they keep an eye on their girls. They keep an eye on their girls.
police because they were regular absconders from care. And they were regularly found in red light areas, and no one had actually pieced any of this together. So I started to put it all
Nobody.
together. The
We needed
intelligence
John
was
to do
just
this.
flowing, and information was coming in from drug dealers on the street. They were also concerned about it, and also other prostitutes were coming forward and talking to us, and saying, this is what's happening.
What, like Clippers?
I then got approached by a social worker, a senior social worker, and at the time this operation, this line of work was mainly in Westminster.
Of course it
And
was.
it started spiralling out to the outer boroughs of London and into the provinces. And this was from Croydon. And the social worker said, look, we've got a big problem down in Croydon. And my inquiries did then start to lead to Croydon.
And the significance of this is that it's now moving into areas of a better class of person. Is that what it means?
Well, what
See, he's so desperately he's like, yeah. So now it's not just like scumbag builders. It's it's better class of people.
Shane, at first it was central London because there is a transient population.
And until Brian puts this in, John was not even going to go down this line. Wasn't going to go down this line. Now he has to because he's been told.
And people don't tend to live there, they just work there. And when they're working away from home, a bit like someone going to Thailand, they will commit a crime, like, of soliciting a prostitute or whatever, because they've got the anonymity of being a tourist. But when they live in an area, there's a different mindset. So it's going into an area that is more residential. And yeah, I would say some of the areas were bad areas. They were bad areas. And I think most of them had their own social problems. But there was a lot of residential kids' homes in these outer boroughs, and a lot of kids would be farmed out, and the kids would network. So if a kid was taken into a secure unit for whatever reason, they would go in there, they would network with other kids, and the main way of earning money was either through violent crime, robbery, or with the girls it was prostitution. So these networks were all set up.
Not petty crime then that kids actually get up to. Not like pickpocketing and stealing out of shops. violent crime or exploitation,
and no one was looking. There was no one looking into them at all.
apart from Jon.
Anyway, a social worker from Croydon said, we've got a problem. I said, okay. And he said, look, we have meetings regularly about certain girls. She said, I'll give you a list of these girls, and they are in trouble. And one girl, she had such infection inside her that she would regularly pass blood and all sorts of nastiness would come out because she had active cysts inside her through prostitution, and she was a young kid. She said, if something's not done, this girl's going to die. She's being pimped out. She's on her knees, this girl. She said, but we invite the police along. We invite the police. We have been doing it for nearly 10 years, and each time they refuse. I said, well, who are you inviting? They said, well, your unit, the vice unit. We've invited them so many times, they know about this. So I then went back in the records, and I went back 10 years, and I went back through all the records of kids found in red light areas over the last 10 years. And yeah, there was right. And I was contacting some of these kids who are now adults. And I said, well, what was happening? They said,
Okay, where are these adults now? What? You were the only person who listened to them to get them justice. You get yourself a platform. You get yourself out there. Where have all these adults been backing this up, saying, "Oh yeah, Jon, get in touch with me"? All those years after, like 8 years after, like he was the only policeman. Now, not a one, not a one. I mean, they can make one up, but it's a bit late now, isn't it? I mean, now it's all Satanists. I mean, it's a bit late now.
well, if the police found us, tell us to do one, get out of here. Or they just ignore us. They knew we were being pimped out. I said, did anyone get taken in for it? And he said, no, we were doing it all the time. So it'd been going on historically, and the unit had known about it. So
How long had it been going on
from
for?
the time I was on there, I'd gone back 10 years, and it had gone back further than that.
Right.
And these were in select red light areas, King's Cross, Islington, Westminster, all in London, and they were the main ones where the kids were being worked. But now Croydon was coming to know, but the police knew about Croydon as well. So these areas, it wasn't any news, But then what you've also got is missing persons unit. So someone goes missing, a missing person unit will be appointed to look into it, what's happened to them, where they are investigating it. But every time a child comes back late or fails to attend a kids' home curfew, which will be an unreasonable hour, say like 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, they don't turn up, the police are called, a form's filled out, and it's just a process because these kids do come back. And so these missing persons, they knew about them. They knew about these kids, and they were just seen as a nuisance. It was just a routine, so-and-so's
Well,
gone
we've
missing
heard
again.
all this. We've heard all this. Let's skip a bit more. Sick of it.
I came back to work, and sure enough, the boss calls me in, and I said to him, no, I'm not talking to you on my own. I want someone with me. So I got a representative from the Human Resources Department. Personnel came, sat down, and he said to me, Jon, well, what's gone on? Made me a cup of tea. I said, well, I'll only talk to you if I can be honest. He said, well, yeah, that goes both ways. I said, okay. I said, well, what have I done? I said, I really thought I'd done well. I'd exposed this, I'd done this, I'd done this. And he turned around to me and said, well, that's the problem. You've exposed it. He said, we knew you could dig, but we never knew you could dig that deep.
Okay, so they put Jon on a mission to expose something that they never wanted exposing. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. If the police are on a mass cover-up and Jon was so great at his job, so good at digging, why did they plonk him right in the job, in the place that they didn't want anyone to dig around in? That makes no sense whatsoever. The police are proper sneaky. I'm no fan of the police. Not all of them. Not all are bad and not all are good. But it makes no sense to me, knowing how sneaky the police are, that they would purposely pick someone who's so great, because Jon's patted himself on the back a number of times here. I've skipped bits where he gets whatever. Anyway, but it absolutely makes no sense that if the police didn't want something being uncovered, they would pick someone who was so good at their job to go and uncover it, only to go through the big mess of threatening him. Listen to the rest of this rubbish.
He then said, what you've exposed is going to F us, past, present and future. This cannot and will not ever get out. He said, if you mention a word of this, you will be thrown to the wolves. He then said,
Yeah, but unfortunately, they were actually looking into this and they were doing this, weren't they? Because Foxy went to jail. Foxy was in jail.
you will lose everything, and that means your job, your home, your kids, you will lose it all. You need to shut your effing mouth. And I was just dumbstruck. I was like, for real? And he said, we never thought you would dig this deep. You have no understanding how deep this goes.
So you're, excuse me, you're a detective constable, so one would have thought in your job, somebody who was professionally good at their job would be good at digging. You dig, you absolutely start to see what's going on. And then I'm just going to use the phrase, these people are so confident that they threaten you point blank.
Look at him. Look at him doing his own narrative. These people. And all the time, his whole agenda was the Satniks. God, you never would have seen it back then with the UK column. It's been kept so quiet. Makes a lot of sense now that Angela Power Disney's pretty much only bit of written work has been put on the UK column. I don't know if it's still there, but it was. Because, of course, she's a good Christian. She doesn't go around attacking people for no good reason. She's not vexatious or anything like that. I mean, Satniks, they're everywhere.
In a room.
With a witness.
With a witness.
With a witness, yeah. At the time, my youngest boy was still quite young, and I was petrified I'd have my kids taken off me. I really thought I'd crossed the mafia. And you're right, it was the confidence, the way it was portrayed against me. And the other thing, which was very bizarre, he said, how do you think you've been treated? Do you think you've been bullied? I went, you're damn right I've been bullied. He said, you have. You've been bullied. He said, there's a form to fill out, a fairness at work form. I'm instructing you to get it now and fill it out. And the police is absolutely awash with this form. There's forms for everything. And he told me the number of the form. He said, you fill it out, you put exactly what's gone on. You've got to do that, son. I said, oh, I will. I will. And he said, and then do you know what happened to it?
Oh, yes, I will.
Went, well, it will go somewhere and get investigated. He said, no, I'll tell you what will happen. He said, all those that you've mentioned will be brought in and they will be interviewed. I said, right, okay, good. That's brilliant. He said, and then it'll come to me to be ratified. He said, and do you know what I'll do with it? I said, well, you pass it on to, the corruption command or something, I don't know. He said, well, not really. And he points to a bin. He'll go in that bin and it will stay in that bin. He said, I will never betray fellow rank, and nor will they. You've no idea what you're up against. Shut your effing mouth. And he got my hand and he said, you've got to give me a gentleman's agreement now. You never, ever look into child prostitution ever again. Now, what happened then, Brian, was I left there totally...
Okay, so he's been told, you leave that well alone, my friend. Go away.
frightened, really frightened. And that was a bit of a spiral downhill for me. And then over the coming years, I left that unit. I left straight away and I said to him, I can't work under you.
Yeah, so these are colleagues that you're doing a...
So he left that unit and said, oh, I can't work under you. Is that your choice? Like, are you allowed to do that? Or do the police actually go, yeah, go on, get lost, go over there now, we've had enough of you? Like, did it go down like that? Well, actually, none of this went down like anything, but does that... I left that unit and I went, oh, really?
difficult, and you're doing a dangerous job out on the ground, and you rely on the backing of your police colleagues to actually protect you against people who are organised crime. Why don't they go for you? Because they know if they go for you, you're going to be protected by the police. And here are your police colleagues simply turning around and threatening you in the same way, which is vicious.
Vicious, and it is a conspiracy. And I mean, conspiracies exist in law. You can conspire.
Is Brian Gerrish's game here then not to have any people come forward because he's putting this out there? Like, actually, there's no point going to the police because this is what's going to happen. Look at this. This is what's happened to this policeman. So, just don't tell anyone. Just there's nowhere to go. Don't go anywhere.
To commit murder, it's in statute law.
It's a criminal offence.
It's a criminal offence. Conspiracy is. So, when people go, bandits, conspiracy theories, there's no theory about it. This is conspiracy reality. And I was in the centre of a very horrible conspiracy. And so frightened, I couldn't tell anyone.
No, you are in the centre of a very horrible conspiracy. It just has nothing to do with the lie that you're spitting out here, friend. Friend. Ugh.
I genuinely
Anyway.
thought they would come for me and come for my children. And the other thing is, I've seen firsthand what the care system is, and there's nothing caring about it. It is a paedophile's playground. These kids and the other thing is, I was working with informants, and a lot of these informants have been in the care system, and one of them turned around to me and said, whatever you do, you never let your children go into care, because what'll happen is, if you ain't there, one of my kids was a little bit behind with things, and I used to tell this bloke, he said, they'll go for him straight away.
What? What? So you've got a police informant, they're usually crooks, and surely a rule of a policeman is you don't give personal information about your life to anyone. So he's with this police informant letting him know that he's got his youngest boy isn't like as far ahead of the game as maybe he could be. He's telling an informant personal details about his life. I thought they usually made crap up to try and win informants over and stuff like that. I thought that's what. Shut up, John. Shut up. And if you were doing that, well, there's no surprise that they used to call you numbnuts. Your work colleagues used to call you numbnuts.
They will get it. Don't ever lay in bed thinking they won't get it. They will get it. And by get it, you know what I mean. And
right. So what happens now then? So you've been threatened.
What happens now is I say I can't work under you, so I leave, and
Just
I go
leave.
onto a child abuse unit.
I just can't work under you. I'm off. I'm going. I'm just going to choose somewhere else in the Met. Sure, that's how it works. Don't you have to ask for transfers and things like that, and wait for it to be agreed, or wait for a position to come up? No, not John. No, I'm not working under you lot. I'm off. Oh, I think I'll go here.
And I end up in North London, a very busy part of North London. And I start on this unit, and they're investigating child abuse. And I'm in there, and I get approached by a detective sergeant and said, look,
Hang on a minute. Right. So he goes through all of what he's just gone through, like all that rubbish, where he's told never get involved with child exploitation again, and he goes, no, I'm leaving here and I'm going to go to North London now and do exactly the thing that I've been told not to do already, to the point that I've been scared for my children and I feel threatened because it feels like the mafia. Make any of this make sense?
as well as being an investigator, do you want to take on an additional role?
Oh, so not only is he known as a massive pain in the backside that was so good at digging into something that no one wanted digging into, that he ups on his own. Please.
So we're like, what? They said, well, there's all sorts of things you can do. I said, is there one to do with a liaison with children's homes? I went, yeah, there is. The girl left 2 years ago.
The very thing he was being told not to do and he's scared of. Because he's scared that his kids are going to get put into care because he's been threatened that. Please.
I said, was there any issues with it? And she said, no issues. It's an easy number. You'll get given a day here and there to go and deal with it. There'll be the odd meeting, but over 2 years, she never had any issues at all. I said, did child prostitution ever crop up? Oh, no, we don't get any of that.
Would that be because it's not called that? It's called child exploitation, trafficking. Would that be it? Oh, he get. Whoa. But I mean, look how toned down all this is now, from how he is now. I mean, he's run riot in his sick head since, hasn't he? He really has. But the UK column has an image, doesn't it? Very levelled, very quiet, very fact-based. I mean, obviously there wasn't any with Holly Gregg. There was no facts there. Then, and half the other crap that has come out. Do you remember the Bradbury pound? Whatever happened to that? I mean, God, that's going back ages, isn't it? That when he was at was it Birkenhead where they were going to arrest the judge? That nonsense. Nothing happened. What's happened with his fixation on common purpose? What's happened there?
Okay, this was the London Borough of Haringey. Now, Haringey has the most amount of kids home of any sort of local authority in the country. I think it was about 22 to 26 care homes for a small London borough. Anyway, so I was given assurances that it wasn't a problem. So I picked up the phone and I asked for a list of all the care homes from social services. So they faxed it through because the police didn't have a copy of it. It come through.
Go away, the police didn't have a copy of it. Oh, because the police are so stupid, aren't they? They're so daft that it was only Jon that could get this information. Only Jon. Police force couldn't.
And it had the phone
Just
numbers,
Jon.
and I rang them up first, and I said, "This is so and so care home." I went, "Yeah." I said, I told them who I was. I said, "Nothing to worry about, but this is what I'm looking into." But went, "Oh right." I said, "How many children you got in?" They said, "About 5." I said, "How many do you lose at a weekend to crime?" And I'm on about prostitution and things like that. They went, "Oh, 3." I went, "You what?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, they usually
That story changed. The number is a lot lower here than when he recounts it again.
go missing on a Thursday and come back on a Monday." I said, do you think they're involved in prostitution?" "Oh, no, we know they are." I went, "Right, well, has the police ever been to speak to you about it?" He went, "No, the police come and pick up the missing persons form, but the kids come back." I said, "Well, what are the kids like?" She said, "Oh, they're in the right state, some of them are bleeding, some of them are so high on drugs, we know that come Wednesday they're going to be kicking off because they've not had their drugs. They've all got money on them, you know." And I was like, "Oh."
Do you know what I have? I am not a fan of social services. I think it is corrupt. I think there's so many problems with the family court system. But I equally know I have known many people who've worked in care homes. Not any that currently do, but did work in care homes. And do you know what? Their level of frustration was the courts letting them down half of the time. They cared about them kids. There's no way that I just can't see it. Yes, there have been bad people that have wormed their way in to deal with vulnerable children, the same as scouts and swimming lessons, all stuff like that. There's wrong uns. But I'm sorry, but no. I'm just not buying that you would consistently have this situation going on where children are coming back physically harmed and you haven't got them in the hospital every 5 minutes because they've been physically harmed. Because if you did take a child to the hospital with injuries like that, the hospital would be calling the police. What, they just don't bother when it comes to children in care? That's not true. That isn't true. And yes, there have been real filthy, disgusting people that have managed to worm into care homes. But again, the vast majority of these people aren't like that.
Oh my God. So that was like real time. So all of a sudden, I've got 3 kids within 6 minutes. By the end of 3 days, I'd found 50 children.
Of course, you had Jon.
50 children. So I held a strategy meeting and I brought in the social services.
Right, at this point, he's just nicking Maggie Oliver's story, isn't he? I'm skipping. I'm skipping. It's just bullshit.
Involving child prostitution cover-ups,
Ugh.
and he totally dismissed it. So I then went to the corruption command
Of course,
and said, "I need to speak to someone very, very senior. It has to be a detective and it has to be a woman." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Women won't roll their trouser legs up," meaning a Masonic link.
Oh, God. Of course. Of course, we had to have that in there. We had to have that in there. Of course we did. Of course we did, because it's the Satniks, Masons. Of course it is. Can't be anyone else. There are lady Masons, though. Didn't think of that, did he? I'm not.
Without entering into the conspiracy realm again, Masonry does have a big stronghold in the police. It has a hold in the police, but then when you become a detective, it intensifies, and when you're a detective on a specialist role, it is almost like a stick of rock, Masonry through it, you know. I'm not knocking it. I work with many of them. I've not got an issue with them, but it is
Jeanette does. Well, I think you do have an issue with them now. Oh, you changed your story so many times. Does he still have an issue with Masons? Oh, I don't know.
another allegiance that you don't need.
Just
you know?
given a detached viewpoint, it has an impact.
It does, without a doubt. And anyone, and I'll tell you how much it has an impact.
Go on then.
When I went to a job agency to try and get work as a civilian detective, I was told by the agency, have you been or are you a Mason? And I said, well, why are you asking that? He said,
He wanted to be a civilian detective. We didn't hear this before. When did he go to that job agency? Because he's still employed by them here. I think he was employed by them till around 2018. And then ever since then, where is his? Oh,
we cannot take anyone who is or has been a Mason. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, because it has ruined too many inquiries, namely the Hillsborough inquiry. Was deliberately frustrated.
No. Skipping. No, sorry, I am. I must have skipped that the last time when I managed to give myself chipmunk voice. Yeah, probably best. Let's skip that nonsense.
Tomorrow. So I met with Maggie Oliver, and
Yeah, stole her
her
story.
was strikingly similar.
No, yours was.
And what she said to me was, John, watch it. She said, have they served you misconduct papers yet? I said, yeah. She said, you'll get arrested next because that's what they did to me.
Okay, so where are these misconduct papers? Like, show us some evidence. Oh, skipping, getting the ump. It's like 50 minutes. Let's just skip a bit more. Ugh.
This attack, you know. He then said, right, we will implement an independent inquiry into what's happened to you and to what's happening all told, because I said there is an algorithm of bullying. And
sorry to interject, did he acknowledge the extent of the child abuse, which is the heart of this matter? You'd obviously told him what you had discovered. Did he actually register that there was this happening?
Well, I told him. I said, this is massive. I said, the tentacles of this go right to the heart of the establishment, and this is causing the whole detriment to society, and it's probably even influencing politics. And I said, and I've got evidence of that, and I explained to him about the thing with Leon Britton. You know,
He had evidence of it. Oh, did we ever see John's evidence of this? Did we? No, we didn't. But of course, there was no evidence. Of course, there's not been a shred of paperwork. I mean, we know John's got paperwork, but it probably doesn't say any of this because John actually went to the tribunal, didn't he? And he got a payout of it. No one ever knows how much that was, but I mean, to be honest, the guy's been a pain in the ass for all this time. It's probably cheaper to pay him off than carry on for your own legal benefit, like your own legal fees and the time with this idiot.
and all the time it's coming out in the press that this man's innocent and everything else. But then Bernard Hogan, how the commissioner of the Met Police, turned around and refused to apologise to Lady Britton. So I'm thinking, well, maybe he knows something that I know. So Mike Pennin then stopped all contact with me. I was assured by his wife he'll ring me, he'll update me, and I couldn't get hold of him at all.
Well, maybe he actually found out that your whole Foxy story was an absolute pile of crap. You were really difficult got very early on, and half of your story wasn't true. Can't defend the indefense.
So the police then...
I just want to say this is the man whose sole responsibility is policing.
Yeah.
And you are telling him of the cover-up of major crime involving children, young girls, and what he does is completely cuts you off.
What he said, I met him on quite a few occasions, and I got brought to his parliamentary office, his ministerial office, you know, and he's right next to Michael Gove. They share the same corridor. And I'm in there, and he turned around to me, and this was his exact words. He said, "What concerns me most about this
is you're lying.
Is the public perception when this gets out." And that's all he was worried about. You know, how's it going to look on the establishment when this goes out? But at the end of the day, I told him.
I doubt he said that. He probably said, look, stop sticking your beak in other people's operations. You're hashing them up. Oh, God. What a liar.
To my opinion, things might have changed. But as far as I'm aware, he's done nothing. He might surprise me yet. I'm not sure. But I've asked repeatedly for the investigation team to get in touch with me, and they haven't. And
seen any of those emails, have we?
Nonsense, you know, that he come out with. And then he said to me, I give you my assurances that Bernard Hogan-Howe, who is a friend of mine, will be shocked when he finds out. So I said, well, are you going to tell him? He said, I will tell him. He will be told. And as far as I'm aware, he never told him. So in the end, I went, carried on back to work and everything else. And all of a sudden I found out that my allegations that were now sort of being ignored, the police's then sort of investigation of me for data protection had gone from management action, minor misconduct, which I would have denied anyway because I did bugger all wrong. It went from that to misconduct to gross misconduct. Now they've sent a file to the CPS for an impending prosecution against me. And I thought, right, well, I've had enough of this. This is outrageous. So I said, I got hold of the commissioner. And I said to the commissioner, I wrote to him.
This is Sir Bernard
Hogan-Howe. And I said, you know, the man that I've made serious allegations against, in which there was witnesses to this, has been promoted. Not only has been promoted, he's been promoted with royal assent and given the Queen's Police Medal 2 years after I made allegations. Now, the format is if you're under investigation for serious issues, you do not get promoted. Your career's on hold till it's sorted out. And I wanted then to get out the police, but they wouldn't let me resign because I was placed under investigation. So I couldn't do anything. I said, you hounded
He went off sick.
me, you've destroyed me, you've ruined me, yet I've done nothing wrong. Now you want to prosecute me? I said, I'll tell you what, you put me before a court and I will tell the world, because it'll be public domain, that this is a vicious cover-up of a whistleblower for, you know, hindering and covering up child prostitution.
He's not a whistleblower. He hasn't named anyone.
And I told him
exposed nothing.
I put everything in the letter. But all of a sudden,
all these years later,
everything changed.
Still nothing.
All of a sudden, the senior management, the assistant commissioners, they're behind me. They're no longer prosecuting me. They're trying to forward my early retirement and everything else. But and other things they did was that they halved my pay without even telling me.
That's what happens when you're on sick forever.
Right. Which is all things I was told would happen.
Right, John, you're saying there that they're moving you towards early retirement, which obviously is of some comfort to you because you still have to.
I mean, he was dragging it out. The more years he had under his belt, whether he was working, complaining he was being bullied, suffering from. He said in one interview he was off sick, suffering from PTSD or something. He was dragging it out.
You still have to live, and you're entitled to a pension and everything from your time serving in the police. What have they actually done to start to investigate the key thing of the massive cover-up of the abuse of children?
It was quite funny because in 2012, I was in Scotland Yard.
Okay, 2012. So Roxy went to prison in 7. So 5 years later, okay.
And the witness I had in the room at the time when the senior officer bullied me saw me in Scotland Yard, and she came up to me and she burst into tears. She grabbed me. She said, I've got quite a powerful job now. And she said, I've got my own office in the yard. I need to.
So who was she then? Who was she? Name her. Need to know you're the whistleblower. Name her.
Talk to you. Can you come and see me? I said, yeah, I'll come. So I went to her office, and she just burst into tears. She grabbed hold of me, hugged me, and she said, can you
Did
ever
she?
forgive me for what happened?
Oh my God.
And I said, well, what are you on about? She said, I watched them bully you and destroy you, and everything you said happened. That little girl died. I said, oh yeah, I know about that. She said, and since you did what you did, they never investigated another case of child prostitution.
Right, give me a second here. Give me a second. Let's just pull that up. Right, apparently this is Foxy. Bear with me one moment. Let me just find it. Where is it? BBC News. 1 second. Well, I'm not reading the whole thing. Right. So he said that this Zoe child was wound up dead. Right? Nothing ever happened. So many years have passed now. You've got this senior police officer bursting into tears, hugging Jon. Oh, nothing ever happened from like 2000 and whenever it was, because he's very sketchy on the years. Here we go. I think he says at some stage in this 2005 or something like that. So this is the 9th of May 2007. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to put a link in the description box there. Right. Walsh of Kilburn, northwest London. Where are we? 5 victims told police how Walsh had ruined their lives, although the case against her focused on offences against 2 girls aged 12 and 15. But nothing ever happened, right? Police people were crying.
And that was 2004, 2005. They never investigated another case. So nearly 10 years.
2004, 2005. So Foxy goes to prison in 2007. All right,
Of
mate.
all those serious crimes. I mean, you're talking raping of children, just short of murder, really. In seriousness, they never investigated another. I mean, they even had a transgender crime unit, and transgender crime it equated for like 0.001% of all. So there was a team investigating that, but child prostitution, there was nothing. And she said everything you said was right.
So how did old Foxy get arrested in 2006 then? Because you'd moved along by then. What a lie! His whole story from the very beginning is a lie.
I left the unit because of how they treated you. Please forgive me.
Right.
So
Please
they never
forgive me.
touched it after that.
Jon, you are still in a delicate situation with the police, so I'll say that we'll just end that
God.
bit there on your relationship and how things are going for leaving the police. Just to finish, give us what is your opinion of what you've uncovered? What is going on?
Well, funny enough, I was asked this when I was interviewed as a witness, and they said, "Why do you think they did this?" And I said, "Well, because they're involved. There is a cover-up, and these people are appointed into these key positions where they have total governance of all these allegations. So they can't be dealt with by any other unit other than the specialist unit. So there's like a filter they go through, and then internally in this unit they will be filtered again. What gets proceeded with and what doesn't, so that they have total autonomy on what they deal with and what they don't deal with. So these people are put in place to make sure these allegations don't get out. And it's not just that. All them years that I worked in this remit, we would get what they call referrals. Now, referrals could come from schools, referrals could come from playgroups, from wherever. And all the years I worked on child abuse investigations, I was aware of only once a referral coming through from NSPCC. Only once. Now, bear in mind, they've got Childline, and all them kids that will be ringing up Childline, especially when Jimmy Savile got needs and everything else.
Oh, I've had
Why
enough
didn't it
now.
never come through? Why didn't it never come through? And these people are filters. And
I really can't. I've had enough of him. You had enough of him? Yep. That's enough. Right, so I'm going to put that BBC link. It's not just the BBC that covered this story of Foxy, Fiona Walsh. Where is it? Yeah, Fiona Walsh. She got 10 years. 2007. She was arrested in 2006. So all of that is completely untrue. But this is old ground. We've spoken about this before, but obviously the channel was a lot smaller then. Yeah, you know. But what I want to know is, what is the reason for Brian Gerrish putting these stories out? He knows he hasn't got. He knows he's been given no evidence that they're correct. What was the point of it? What is Brian Gerrish's agenda? Because he's got one. He's got one. What it is? Who is he? Where'd he come from? Who put him there? Don't give me 12-foot tall Ted turned up at your house and gave you a projector, and some woman years before had said you're going to do the work of God. That doesn't wash. That doesn't wash with anyone who's got like a methodical thinking brain. How did all of this come around? Why won't you can't find anything about him? Can't find anything about him. Ugh, I don't know. It's just weird. Anyway, right. Let's hope this didn't chipmunk me out, because I'm not doing this again. Anyway, look after yourselves. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye.